Grandpa was the adventurer that hired a driver to take him through the jungles of Mexico to visit archaeological sites such as Chichen Itza. Or at least everybody told me. But to be quite honest, as a little girl, I thought that Grandpa was smart because he melted down birthday candles and put them on his braces so they wouldn't cut his lips. I surely never doubted that Grandpa was an innovative guy. But being only a little girl, I thought that Chichen Itza meant eat your pizza in Pig Latin. Even though Grandpa was an intelligent world traveler, and all that I was an expert at was singing the My Little Pony theme song, our similarities grew apparent as I grew older and Grandpa grew even older. Grandpa and I shared a lot more than just the same last name. He had a great appreciation for music, as do I. I remember the first time he brought his violin over to my house. He stood on his tall, thin legs, back straight, chin up in the air, and all of a sudden he broke out into a fiddle, with a smile on his face, bending his knees and rocking back and forth to the melody. I was awed by his performance, and inspired enough for violin to become my instrument of choice in middle school. I think this was the happiest that I ever made my grandpa. We would play together on our violins every chance that we had. Grandpa thought that I was amazing because I got a gold medal at a competition, but I thought he was even more amazing because he started playing violin in his late 70s, and he'd go to jam sessions with other younger musicians. He had no trouble rocking out. Through music was the way that Grandpa and I first connected and communicated. When I was little, Grandpa would always try to tell me stories, but I actually never had any idea what he was saying because he was so smart and he used such big words. Even though I couldn't quite comprehend his stories, thick with metaphoric meaning, I listened anyway, because there was something captivating and charming about his voice and the way that his eyes would light up when he talked about his adventures. He had the best storytelling voice that often inadvertently lulled me to sleep. It wasn't until that I grew older that I appreciated what he was saying, and our similarities became yet again apparent. When Grandpa was a businessman living in Chicago, with his family he used to study Spanish on the train to and from work. Back in 1963, Americans rarely ever traveled to Mexico, and even if they traveled to Europe, it was by boat rather than by airplane. But Grandpa didn't let this hold him back. He loaded up the family and flew to Mérida, Mexico, where they only encountered one other American on their entire trip. He hired a driver to take the family through the jungle to various archaeological sites. This was one of the first of his many trips to Mexico and all around the world. I share Grandpa's passion for the study of language, culture, and travel. Grandpa's instilled this desire in my father, who in turn instilled it in me. I am specifically fascinated with Japanese language and culture. Grandpa was fascinated by Japan too. He traveled there several times for business, and he had the ability to adapt and connect to people from any cultural background. This ability, along with his politeness, enabled him to make lifelong friends that he kept in touch with through extensive handwritten letters, and that he met on more than one occasion. Grandpa was a highly regarded and a respected man, and I truly thank him for the adventurous spark that he ignited in me. I wish I were born a little bit earlier so that I could listen and fully appreciate the stories that Grandpa had to tell while they were still fresh in his memory. Grandpa was a brilliant man, and his intelligence was unmatched and incomparable to anybody. I can only hope that someday his intelligence gene shows up in me so that I can lull my grandchildren to sleep with my all-knowing and enchanting voice.